Now, what would your reaction be if you received a bill for $24,000 for using your smartphone overseas? Probably unprintable, I'd suggest. Increasingly, small businesses and consumers are suffering from bill shock as global data roaming charges hit, but the telecommunications industry says it's not their fault. Emily Mitterhumer has this story.
Bill shock due to global data roaming charges is becoming more frequent and small businesses are being caught out.
We received about 50% more complaints in 2010-11 than we did in 2009-10. In the past 12 months, we've seen an increase in complaints about global roaming charges.
Many businesses rely on their employees to be contactable when on overseas trips. But the cost of staying in touch could in some instances be enough to drive the unwary to the wall.
If you go over there and you've done your budgeting and you've done a good plan and you've got your money and you know where you're going, and all of a sudden you've got to find $24,000 more from somewhere else, which is what happened in one case that I know of, well, that's your business gone.
The Australian Communications Consumer Action Network says it's pushing for providers to supply better information for consumers on how much data they're using.
So we're seeing, and this is especially the case when people travel, bills that are in the tens of thousands of dollars because people haven't been able to adequately track what they're using, and once you go over, the price is really high for doing so.
In some cases, ACCAN says that data charges have been as much as 1,000 times the cost of local data. The industry says this is due to what overseas providers are charging Aussie telcos for use of their network.
We are a very small player in a very large market, and carriers here have to negotiate agreements with other carriers around the world for provision of roaming services.
According to an OECD report, roaming charges for Australian consumers are the third most expensive in the world. For example, one iPhone photo sent from overseas costing around $30. But the Consumer Watchdog says that the margin charged by Aussie telcos on top of what their costs are is only around 25%. Service providers say they're making efforts to make customers more aware of global data charges, but the industry body says that using a phone overseas, as you would at home, is still a luxury.
Bear in mind that international communication using your smartphone anytime, anywhere in the world is in fact a premium service. It attracts a premium charge.
The industry says it's up to customers to speak to their telcos about travel plans, but the Ombudsman is putting the onus back on carriers.
We think that more can be done to make sure that consumers are not only aware of the charges, but they specifically consent to that service being turned on before they travel overseas.
Notifying customers of their spend level is only regulated under a voluntary code. So for the moment, it's a case of buyer beware.